Okay. So what were you saying, Samuel? Like
Wanted to get that out before the
women are
recording
made
started.
to.
This might sound like I'm being arrogant, but I just want to, being in a room with people that you know are in a different place than you are, more mature, smarter, right? So like I was just reading about this saying, like, if you always go to places where you have to be the best, be the smartest, you're never going to grow.
Mhm.
I appreciate your willingness to be here, and I hope you're not hearing that as a slight to an injury. It's actually something I honor in you, and I hope other men will hear that. Be in rooms where you're not the best and the brightest. It's the only way you're going to grow.
Yeah, it goes back to that being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Yes.
To
which
be
is
to
which is being genuine and authentic.
Which is exactly like you have to be willing to, and that's why people avoid those situations, because it's a mirror directly to them to show their inadequacies,
And
where
if
they're
you're ego
failing.
driven, right? If you're
Exactly.
sorry to jump in. If you're ego driven, you aren't gonna show up in rooms like that. So I commend you, Michael, for.
But what's crazy
Yes.
about those rooms where you're by yourself, where you separate yourself and you close that door, the Bible tells us a lot of times that that's where you talk to God. That's where God meets you. That's where you actually grow and strengthen yourself. Whenever you're quiet, the Bible tells you to go into a room in a closet and close the door, not necessarily be out there and be Mr. Look at me, I'm changed and blah blah blah. It's close the door and have that intimate time and that strength. Because again, like it was mentioned, you're not going to be able to by yourself. You're not going to be able to deny those social situations if you're placed in them, or if you place yourself in them, until you grow in your strength. Well, the whole point is like, don't be conformed to the world, but not just don't be conformed, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that only happens through time in the presence of God, time with the Holy Spirit changing you, time and you know what I mean? It's a process, is what I'm saying. A lot of people like to consider conversion as like I met Jesus, and since then I was never this. Every struggle, every vice I had, it dropped, and praise God. Dude, Paul, it took him like 12 years to unlearn and relearn what he needed before he went on his first missionary journey. You know,
And he never got rid of the thorn in his flesh, right?
it's something you fight, whatever, but it's God's grace. Remember that the reason that you're saved is because his grace is enough, and that's why. So just keep working, we should all keep trying to be true to our beliefs, true to what we know is foundationally true, as opposed to, I'm guilty of that too. I fall into peer pressure all the time, with people at work, with people that, I'm surrounded with jokes, with different conversations we fall into, to want to not be Mr. Oh, I don't talk about that. I'm going to go in my office now. It's against my nature. And I still don't know how to really get out of that. I'm like, should I just get a different job? Cause that would be the only thing I could think of, is like, find yourself away from those situations and totally like remove yourself. But if you have friends that you've known your whole life, people that are closer sometimes than family, what do you do in that situation?
I need to
Those are
leave
real.
soon. I'm not heading out, but I want to make a point around each time you do that, God gives you a little bit more strength, right? So we were talking about that yesterday on a podcast around like doing the difficult thing. God grants you the grace to do it, and then you've built that muscle. So, I mean, I think some people could listen and go like, I can't do that. I can't stand up. Well, when you take a small step in that direction, then it becomes not easy, but easier the next time, right? So try, don't give up.
Chip, let's hear from you. I see you like nodding, and he's
Silent
brewing.
observer.
He's brewing something over there.
No,
What do you
just
got?
coffee.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
No, I
there you
said
go. I think it's a little
I'm
bit
not.
delayed, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not brewing anything. Just thinking, trying to soak all of this in. Obviously, when Michael was talking about you find yourself and that, right? Like, I mean, even if you think that you learned a lesson, more oftentimes than not, than I would like to admit, you find yourself relearning that over and over again. But authenticity, I feel like it lies into God's given character for your life. If you look at it from the beginning, right, the blueprint and everything like that, and it's all over the Bible, and it's very clear that let your yes be yes, meaning like, if whatever you say, be able to stand on that, like be a man of your word. When I got married, actually before I got married, my father-in-law told me something that I learned very quickly. Said, in this life, all you have is your word. And once you lose that, you lose everything. Because people will remember that you told them something. And if you come through, they'll not only remember, but they'll honor that. because they'll know that, okay, when Chip says that or when Angelo says that, I know he'll come through. But with character, right, with our authenticity, being authentic, it is also shapes our identity. But identity means responsibility. And not a lot of people want to have that. Not a lot of men want to have that
Mm.
responsibility that, man, I got to be a certain way. I got to carry that. It's like the only way I can describe it, it's like, you know, picking up your cross daily and following God. Sometimes that cross can get heavy because it's heavy to carry, let alone carry it every day, day and night. It's easier to drop it and go through the broad, road versus the narrow road. And what I mean by that is that it's easier to follow society. I don't know, I'm speaking personally. Sometimes I find myself being easier being the bad guy versus the good guy. It's almost like second nature. It's just easier to screw you over and to mess you up than to actually respond to you with love, with kindness, with humility, and just love you. It's easier for me to hate you.
I want to chime in on something Chip said. That I have to leave, but Chip, what I'm making this connection when you're talking about picking up your cross, right? And I was just thinking while you were sharing, if you don't have convictions, you are still standing for something. Standing for nothing is standing for something. And I think people have in their head, well, I don't want to offend, I don't want to hurt someone, I don't want to screw up, I don't want to make a mistake. And the reality is you become the exact thing you don't want, right? So
Mm,
here's what I'm saying. Like I had a recent event where I got a text message while I was working, and I'm upfront. I'm like, I check my phone because I have 2 kids and I have a wife. And this person said, are you checking your phone? And I said, yes, I'm checking my phone. And the person was really offended by that. And they said, are you going to stop doing that when you're with me? And I said, no, I'm not. And she's not seeing me anymore. And I said, I don't care. Like, whatever you think, and I didn't say all this to her. I was more respectful, but I was saying like, no, I'm going to stand by my convictions. You can go see another therapist, but I will always put my family in front of you. Sorry about your luck. I will glance at it and that's it. I'm not going to like stare at my phone. But if that's a problem for you, then go somewhere else, right? So what I'm saying is if you fall, you're going to sink to this level that you're saying you don't want to be, but you already are, right? Like, oh, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I don't want to offend. So I'm going to offend my family for this person who's a client? No, I'm not. My daughter, my son, my wife will always come in front of my clients, period. And I don't care if I lose all of them. I just don't care. So what I'm saying is if you are wavering in your conviction, you do have a conviction. Your conviction is whatever flavor or variety or spice the world is selling you. And you're saying in your head, I'm not that guy. Bullshit, you are that guy. So hold a conviction and you will offend someone. Get used to it. Get used to it. Offending people isn't the end of the world. It actually makes you and that other person stronger. The reason I say this is she shouldn't be seen. She should be seeing someone who's going to hold to her conviction. I don't have her conviction. So that I got to go.
Mm, mm, mm.
See ya.
Isn't it funny that every time you start a sentence with like, not to be offensive or like, not to be racist, it's usually like the most offensive or racist thing.
It's
Like,
good to be racist.
not to
Just
hurt
all-
your feelings and then
not
proceeds
just-
to hurt the crap out of their feelings. I love Samuel.
but that's
Somebody needs therapy. You're not important to me. That's not what he was saying, but it's just funny. It's like,
right. Let's get something really clear, okay? Like
you're
you're
not
paying
special.
me. You're paying me. I'm not paying you.
Oh gosh. Will you pay attention to me? No, never. And don't expect me to.
I told you I'm playing Roblox while we're talking. But that's the thing though, right? When you really take a stand on something, when you find the hill that you're willing to die on, dude, the rules of the game change. You play by a different set of rules. It's the same thing like when you experience Jesus to a level where you cannot go back to the man who you were. And there's always this beautiful tension. And I've caught myself like referencing this the last couple of weeks is I'm not quite the man I used to be, and I'm not quite the man I'm supposed to be yet. So you're not quite the man who you were, you're not quite the man you're made to be yet. So you're in this beautiful season of tension, and it's necessary because one, God needs to get you alone. Two, you need to, just what Andrew said earlier, unlearn certain things, remove certain things. You can make space for the new things that's supposed to take place. Just like breaking down muscle, you got to break down muscle to build something new. And that, I think that's one of the most difficult things for men to understand is we're not sure on our values. We're not sure what hill are we willing to die on, type
Yeah.
of thing.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, how hard do you have to believe in something to be willing to quote unquote die on a hill? Like, what ingrains it so deep? What's the differentiating factor between something, like I said earlier, superficial that you thought you knew, but like the 12 disciples, each one of them were willing to die for the fact that they're like, no, that he was alive again.
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest
Yes.
arguments to Christianity is like, oh, well, maybe they hid his body or blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, these guys, they died poor, rejected, and in gruesome ways. But John, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that means that they believed something so intrinsically, so
Yes.
deeply that they didn't
Yes.
care what the world had to offer. And that's really what we have to get to is that, and we don't get there without having a true experience, having like a true interaction, like a true life built day by day, like Chip said, picking up your cross every day and experiencing, tasting of the goodness that God gives you. And, it's not all suffering. It's the world's going to reject you. You're going to have suffering. You're going to be maybe rejected by you're going to lose friends. You're going to lose certain relationships that weren't healthy and good for you, but you're going to gain and taste something that is good. And that's what I think a lot of people miss that. Like, taste and see that the Lord it's good. And there's something amazing about it. And when you finally in truth taste that, when you experience that for yourself, you cannot overwrite personal experience with superficial information. You just can't. And that's what changes. That's what changes things when you finally experience it for yourself. And if you haven't had that
100%.
experience, you should pray and should ask God to give you that experience.
Yeah. And if someone's listening or watching right now and they're like, all this stuff sounds good, what do I do? How do I get that? I want to experience this God that these guys are talking about, that these guys have been led to the hill that they're willing to die on. And part of that is getting around a different crowd of people. Part of that is getting around some believers. I mean, I know we don't like to do this, but reaching out, asking for help, or just reaching out and making a connection. You got to change something. And part of it, Andrew, I think I love where this conversation is because part of it is we're not willing to pay the cost. Because if we decide to go deeper into faith, if we decide into whatever, it's going to cost us something. It's going to cost us letting go of something. It's going to cost us a bachelor party at Cancun where like the party's right on the other side of this door and you're over here. So you're so convicted in your beliefs that you're like, I know what's back there, and the previous me would have loved to have been there. But there's something that's keeping me in this room right now. There's a conviction that's keeping me in this room right now. And I may not fully understand it yet, but I just know I have to be here. When you start doing things like that, when it doesn't make sense to you in here, but in your heart, and you're like, I think that's the beginning of conviction, where your mind starts to think like, Michael, there's a party on the other side. Like, what are you doing? But there's something that's keeping you here. So I think that starts, again, the renewing of the mind. I think that's part of that. You're just going to start thinking differently. You're going to start seeing things a little bit differently.
There's a cost. There's a cost to conviction.
Yes.
You have to pay something. You brought that up, Angelo, and you're kind of talking about that you're giving something up in order to gain something. And not to be too biblically, like just to go straight to Bible stories or anything like that. But there's an instance where this kind of same situation we've been talking about comes up. And there's the story of like the rich young man and Jesus. He comes up to him and he says, what teacher, what must I do to attain eternal life? What must I do to get to that point where I believe and I have that conviction, I'm assured in this thing I want to believe. And Jesus says, like, why do you call me good? He immediately attacks, like, what do you believe? Why do you believe what you believe? Which is interesting. And he says, follow the commandments. by your mother and father, don't steal, don't murder, all those. He lists out those things, right? And he says, I've kept all those things. I've the superficial things, I've kept them since I was young, and I did all those things. And then Jesus says to him, and it says in one of the Gospels, it says really beautifully, it says he looked at him and he loved him because he knew he did. But then he said, you have many possessions, go and sacrifice, sell everything you have, give everything away to the poor, pick up your cross and follow me, right? And then the guy became sad because he wasn't willing to give up his possessions, what he had, his position, his friends. He wasn't willing to sacrifice the world in order to gain eternity and follow Christ. And it said that he left Jesus sad. He turned away very upset. And you think yourself, how can you have an interaction? How can you have a coming to Jesus moment? You've met Jesus and you walk away sad. Because people are like, come to Jesus, come to Jesus. You go to church and you have an experience where you feel Jesus, right? And you have that moment and then you leave sad, which is possible. People don't talk about this. If you're not willing to sacrifice, if you're not willing to give up on yourself, if you're not willing to not conform to the world, then you're never going to have that. You're never going to attain the true conviction, which can only come by the receiving of the Holy Spirit from God. So that's something to maybe take away and think about. I got really preachy. I'm sorry. I have a problem with monologuing.
Yeah. No, Andrew, I really appreciate that because I was actually just going to comment. I think this podcast right now was a perfect recipe because we have stories from men who are beginning, men who have been in it for a little bit. And each one is in a different season. I look at my time, I've been podcasting for a long time now, and I have like an ear, or I have this tendency to, while we're recording or while we're in it, in the back of my mind, it's like, how is it going to be perceived by people? I put it in not fear of judgment, but more of like putting myself in a viewer. Okay, how are they going to sit here and how are they going to digest this? Is it too heavy? Is it too light? And man, I mean, if anyone's going to jump into an episode, this would be a really, really beneficial one for people to jump into if they haven't been in any of the passive, because I think there's just a purity that we were able to capture today. And it was so conversational and it felt good. That's my true opinion. And if it was too preachy, I'd tell you, I'd probably message you in the background. Hey chill a little bit. Down. Chill a little bit, my man.
Evangelist hour. TV, all of a sudden it was like, and if you feel led to give us a donation, text sow a seed in faith and see if the Lord
seed. Send it to 55111 Chip.
She just gets a flood of money. He's like, what?
Chip, what's your Zelle again, Chip? But seriously, I look at this conversation, and if someone, again, whether they're at the beginning or maybe a little bit later in their stage of faith or life, they're going to get something from this conversation. They're going to walk away with it like, man, yeah, I love this. This is good. This is really good.
Definitely a good conversation, guys.
Always. Well, let me wrap up. And then if you guys have a couple minutes, we'll hang out for a little bit. But I don't even remember what we were supposed to talk about. I think we've touched on it a little bit, but I love how this conversation just turned out. So I appreciate you, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.